You guys, let's get ready to do the side panel of your kitty. The first thing that you're going to do is pick up stitches along the right front sleeve edge. So this is my right front sleeve edge, and I am going to pick up stitches with the right side facing. And the trick here is to pick up one stitch in every other row. So if you cast on more stitches, let's say that again. If you cast on more rows than were called for the sleeve, because you wanted your sleeve to be longer, you are just going to pick up one more stitch in every other row. So this garter edge, one stitch in every other row is each garter bump. And you'll see when I'm picking them up, do you see how I use my fingers right there? Now let's make sure I'm in the frame. And I'm picking up and knitting one stitch in every other row all the way up that edge. Once I get to the not garter stitch rows, it's quite easy. Let's make sure I'm in the frame. So you're going to pick up the number for the size that you're working, and then I will show you the next step. Okay, I've picked up my stitches for my sleeve, and then the pattern says to pick up 2 stitches in the ditch. And basically that's like the area in between the side seam stitches and the sleeve stitches so that you don't end up with a gap under your arm. So I'm going to pick up this stitch right in here. And this is one of those, like, you can't really do this wrong. And then this stitch I'm going to actually pick up, but I'm going to work it through the back loop because that's going to tighten up. See, I still kind of have a hole right there. So I'm going to pick up that one. You just kind of want to go for something that when you look at it, it's tightened everything up. So you can see there's, an art and a science to that. And now I've already put my side seam stitches onto my needle, and I'm just going to knit across them. If you have a provisional cast on still in, then I have a separate video for how to rip that off and put your stitches onto a needle. Sometimes it's easier to use a smaller needle to put them onto, and then you're just going to knit across them. And when you get to the end of this, you're going to cut your yarn, and then I will see you for the pick up and purl, just in case you've never done that before, okay? All right, now I am picking up stitches along the right sleeve on the back side of the sleeve, and you're going to pick up and purl across here. It's the exact same as picking up and knitting. You just are wrapping the yarn around. You've got your yarn in the front of your work, and you're wrapping the yarn around, purling the stitch. Just for these garter stitches, sometimes you have to use your fingers or another needle to lift that yarn up and over. Once you're past those little garter bumps, it's easier. So I'm going to pick up in there. I think it's good when you guys see me do something that's a little more awkward. Right? I just want to make sure that was still showing well in the camera. There's that last garter bump right there. And then you are going to pick up and purl one stitch in every other row, working down the back of the right sleeve until you get to that armpit. And when you get to that armpit, you are going to pick up 2 stitches in the ditch, just like you did on the front side of the right sleeve. Sorry, I'm having some funky bits to get underneath there while we're talking. I think it's just that right there. And then you will take out the provisional cast on and work across the back side seam stitches, and then we'll meet to start the panel together, okay? All right, so I've got all my stitches on my needle, and the next step is to crochet cast on with the wrong side facing onto the left-hand needle. So you'll see that with my wrong side facing, the right-hand needle has the working yarn coming off it that I haven't cut after I purled across the back side seam stitches. And now I am going to crochet cast on with scrap yarn 10 stitches with the wrong side facing onto the left hand needle. So I've got 1 on there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's make sure we're still on the screen there, and 10. And I'll just go back and count, because that's classic when you don't do that. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then to finish off that crochet cast on, I just do 1 or 2 single crochet chains and pull it through. Okay, that step is done. Now, with the right hand needle, and I'm keeping my wrong side facing, so you're totally set up and ready to go, I'm just going to knit across those 10 stitches. If you want to, after you knit across these 10 stitches, you can place a lifeline into those 10 stitches so that when you go to pull out the provisional cast on out of them, those 10 stitches are ready and waiting for you. This is going to be the spot where the side seam panel meets the bottom portion of the sweater, that bottom lace portion of the sweater. There you go. So now we're all set up and ready to work. We're going to go to setup row 2. And now I'm going to turn my work. So basically what's happening now is I'm going to be joining the back and the front of the right side of the sweater. So across these stitches, and I'm doing this with a reverse stockinette stitch panel, so don't be surprised that it says right side and purl 9. So I'm going to purl 9. And now I'm going to slip 1 purlwise with yarn and back, and then I'm going to knit 1, and that knit 1 is a live stitch, and then I'm going to pass that slip stitch over. And now you're going to turn your work. So I'm turning my work. A little awkward on camera. There we go. And now I'm going to slip the first stitch purlwise with yarn in front, and then I'm going to bring my yarn to the back of my work, and I'm going to knit 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now I'm going to bring my yarn to the front. I'm going to slip that last stitch purlwise, and then I am going to purl 1, and you can see that's a stitch from the sweater, a live stitch from the sweater, and I'm going to pass that slip stitch over. At that point, if that seems a little tight, just pull up right there, and that will tighten things up a little. Sorry if that seems a little loose. You used my wrong words. All right, and now we are on our right side row again, and we are jumping down to the 6 row repeat. And what you'll notice on the 6 row repeat is rows 1 through 4 bind off 1 live stitch from the edge, and rows 5 and 6 bind off 2 stitches. And that is so that the row gauge on the side panel matches the stitch gauge on the body of the sweater. And you'll be working that 6 row repeat basically up until those stitches you picked up in the ditch, and then you'll just switch to doing a single decrease as written for the sleeve panel. And that's because once you get to the sleeve, you can see where that transition is. You have row gauge matching row gauge, so you don't need to do that double decrease to get the stitch gauge to match the row gauge anymore. This is why I write the patterns for you, because I figure out the scary math, right? So I'm just going to work a bit of that side panel and show you what it looks like. So I will be right back. And there you have it. I am working my side panel, attaching the front and the back of the right side of my kitty. I want to show you what happens if you get lost when you're doing the side panel and you're not sure if you're on a single decrease or double decrease. It's pretty easy to look back at that edge, if you kind of lift up these edge stitches a little bit, you can look underneath and see there's only one stitch there and one stitch there and then two stitches right there. So I think it gets pretty easy to read your knitting to tell if you have to put this down, if you're on a single decrease or a double decrease. And again, remember, you're going to work those single and double decreases as written in the pattern until you make it up to the sleeve stitches. And then you work just single decreases until you have 9 stitches left on each side. And then you'll do the sleeve decreases. And that just kind of like narrows down the bottom of the sleeve and gives it a little bit of shape. So there you have it. How to do the side panel on Kitty.